What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 35. Kitty, you want to be
35.
episode 35 of Drinks and Dogs. Again, as usual and as always, it is myself and Katie Matthews here. Quick shout out to our sponsors, Ray Allen Manufacturing. They have everything A through Z that you'll need for your dog training needs. I'm sure they got they got pretty much everything on there, even like treats and stuff. And they got pretty much everything you possibly. It's like the online Costco, I guess you would say, for anything you would need for your dog. Great gear. Everything's made and manufactured here in the U.S. You can use the Primal 10 code for your discounts, all caps. But yeah, that is our main and only sponsor right now. So we got on this one real quick, Katie. How are you, sir? How's the walking going? I know I checked in briefly on Sunday, which got carried away with the kids stuff. But how's everything going, man?
It's going good, keeping the momentum. For those that don't know, I mean, we film these episodes pretty consistently. So, I mean, today is a week from last, episode 34. We talked a lot about health and shared some transparency, what I got going on. So, and as we were talking a little bit before we started rolling, I was a couple minutes late to get started today because one of the strategies I'm implementing is I'm picking, and I'm not done yet making my list, but I'm making a list of things that every single day, 7 days a week, every single day, gets done no matter what. Like
checklist.
It's non-negotiable. It's not if you feel like it, it's not oh, well, I'm a little under the weather today. No, it's everything on this list gets done. Period. Now, mind you, when you're making a list like that, or when you're employing a strategy like that, it does, you have to use some logic, you have to use some intelligence, and you definitely have to keep in mind the concept of the reachable rung, meaning don't make that list too freaking long, because then you'll fail. And the whole point of this is not to experience failure. So my list is going to be pretty short, but one of the things on it is to walk every day. Minimum 1 mile. I mean, which is nothing, right? Minimum 1 mile. So, I mean, I was a couple minutes late because I got a stacked schedule today from when I woke up till when I go to bed. And I had finished up with a client, and I looked at the clock and I'm like, I have like 45 minutes before the show starts.
Yeah.
This is it. I don't want to walk at midnight. Like, I like to chill before bed, not exercise before bed. So I went out, busted out a quick walk before we sat down and grabbed a shower, and here I am. So little things like, I mean, honestly, making the bed. I know that's so cliche. Like, you hear that all the time. Listen, folks, it's real, because when you start the morning, why not start out with a win? And for me, like, I've been lazy. I mean, my bed it's sheet, it's a comforter, like, there ain't much to do, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, whew, you're done. But I wasn't even doing that, man. Like, I'd roll out of bed and then go make coffee. And so working on kind of building a functional list of things that I can do every day, things that are within my reach, and bit by bit climbing back on that horse, man. I'm actually, tonight, I got to make a phone call as soon as we get done with this. Game plan is Jujitsu tonight.
Nice.
I got to call my buddy, see if he's teaching.
How long has it been since you've been off the mats?
I went one time in June of 2020.
Okay.
21. I went one time. I don't even consider that. I don't consider going to a class. I don't consider going to an open mat training. Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's not training. That's you showed up and participated for a little bit. Training is like you go 2 to 3 times a week. Like, that's training. I mean, I haven't trained since my injury in 2018.
Yeah.
When I tore my groin. Right after getting my purple. Which was perfect. Like, I mean, I was on a roll, no pun intended, but like, I was on one of those up kicks where I had gotten back into things. I did my first IBJJF. I was training like 3 to 4 times a week. I was feeling good. I'm like, all right, I'm getting back into this groove. I had gotten my purple, which was, I mean, I was like a 12-year blue belt.
The
Just
common.
through injuries in and out. I finally got my purple. I mean, I'm crushing it. Dude, tearing a groin is horrible. I mean, no injuries, good, right? But like, you don't know how much you use your groin outside of the obvious.
Yeah, it's a it's definitely one of those like injuries that it hurts pretty much with everything from what I've heard and what I've seen.
Everything,
Yeah.
everything. Oh, have you ever in your physical training and lifestyle, have you ever done cupping?
Yeah, I've only done it 2 or 3 times. For a while there, when I was training with like Kung Lee, I was training his dogs, and then we were shooting a pilot show for Discovery. His wife or his ex-wife, she was really big into physical therapy, so she would basically, because at that time I was still training a lot in jujitsu, and I was still teaching boxing. This is like when I first started Primal Canine. Still the only decoy. Just my body was getting banged up pretty bad. But she did like cupping, that one thing with the penny, the copper stuff,
Mhm.
like the or you rub all that like tissue or the toxins out. Um, there was a couple other like Eastern medicine things that she would do as well, and it worked really well. I mean, you were sore as shit like the next day or even like after. But a lot of that cupping stuff and that coin stuff, that stuff helped a lot when it comes to recovery, and that stuff was pretty fun for sure.
I mean, I know we
Fun
have a
in a
lot of,
sarcastic way.
yeah, right. I mean, I know we got a lot of decoys that watch this, and just everyone in general who's dealing with physical strength, physical fitness, or coming back off of a layoff, or starting when they've never started before. Um, for those that don't know, cupping is where they literally take a cup, like a glass cup, and they put it on your body, and it creates like there's like a suction mechanism to it,
Yeah,
and they leave it on. And so you got these cups just sitting on you, and it it creates a very very powerful suction to the point where, like, if you've seen someone when they're done, especially on their back, they look like they got raped by an octopus or like
just all
molested. Like, it's like horrible. There's like these round purple bruise suctions all over their body. I had it done after I tore my groin. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I found finding a physical therapist when you are healthy, finding a physical therapist when you are involved in some type of athletic. And that would apply to our decoys. That would apply to anyone who participates in any type of combat sport. It's really hard to find a doctor or physical therapist that you can actually talk to about what happened.
yeah.
They have no clue. And so I found so many physical therapists are used to dealing with either car accident recovery or senior citizens. And it's like, well, no, I was like wrestling with someone and they tried to split my legs apart and I tried to resist. And they're looking at you when you're explaining it like, what? What were you doing? And so I had actually found through Instagram a guy who's a purple belt locally who was also a PT. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't even I'm not even asking you how much you charge because I don't care. I will pay it out of my
And
pocket.
that's one of the things too. I mean, like if you're using like standard health insurance, I mean things that I've learned over the years. Now I take a lot of my physical well being more into thought than I used to. But I mean, like a lot of the stuff that you find is, when you find sports medicine, like for a while, we'd use, Erin has like this app or whatever that she can find like a physical therapist or like masseuses that'll come to your house. This became big after the pandemic, and we started finding like we experimented with a lot of different ones who were more sports based, people who can give me like one, the physical therapy that I need when it comes to the massage aspect of things or cupping or whatever it may be, and then two, to help with certain movements to kind of repair or enhance like the shoulders and knees, things that I've had going on with me. The other thing too, when because you brought up like the decoy thing and physical health aspect of things, you know, I have like red lights. I have like a big giant red light therapy thing that I use. that I stand in front of like 15 minutes a day, and then I have one of those, and it's really, I mean, that red light's a little more expensive. But then I have like one of those little saunas, little portable saunas that your head sticks out of. It's like another red. It's not red light, but it's
Infrared.
infrared sauna, and that you're talking about things to do before you sleep. Like that thing's, that thing's awesome. I crank it up as much as I can, and then I just layer up, put a sauna suit on, try to get my temperature up as high as I possibly can in there for about 25-30 minutes, and then then I get ready for bed after that. But using the combination of that's kind of kept me, it definitely when I'm consistent with it has kept me at the highest level of recovery, and then I'm able to run my miles, do my weight lifts or weightlifting, train jiu-jitsu consistently, train dogs as being for the most part. I'm getting bit by dogs roughly 5 days a week.
Jesus,
Um,
man.
and then they're my most of them are my dogs, and none of my dogs bite soft. So like incorporating all these different things, plus like ice, and Aaron's on top of me pretty much when it comes to like icing and getting things um, putting into my schedule that I need to do in order to maintain a very active the active life that I have. And that thing for decoys, if you're in decoy, or even let's say you train jujitsu and you're just tuning into this, the older you get, the more recovery will have to come into mind. Even when it comes to supplementation and just or general or thing like Huberman calls it like optimizing. They don't like the word the word supplementation, like optimization of certain
Mhm.
things. Even then, like I use a variety of different supplements, that I'm constantly taking on a daily basis to one, enhance what I'm doing, but two, help with recovery, because recovery is a big thing. And, health aspects, as you get older, as Katie's was talking about, become a little more front minded than they typically do when you're younger, just running and gunning. And especially like how I live my life, it's the same thing.
Well, it's
But
because you don't. There's no punishment. When you're younger, there's really no punishment for not being recovery minded. There's no punishment for not giving a shit. Let's be
yeah,
frank. Like there's no consequence for it because you just keep going and everything's fine. It's when all of a sudden you're doing the things you've always done, or you're neglecting yourself perhaps the way you have in the past, but now there's a punishment. Now there's a very undesirable consequence. And that's when you have to change. Oh, you mean punishment can change behavior? Imagine that. Oh, you mean it's a natural thing that happens in life and helps us become stronger and better and learn? Oh, we're not. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I got distracted there for a minute.
it's almost like a dog training.
Maybe,
Yeah.
just maybe. But yeah, now you get punished for it. And that's what we talked about last week was, I got my spanking. And now it's like, all right, time to change behavior. And you know,
What's that comparison like? If we were to make that, like, draw that line, or not say draw that line, but actually make that conclusion a little more like what dog, avoidance corrections when it comes to a dog, something that's self-inflicted is something that they typically remember more than something that's not.
yeah,
Same thing when it comes to like free shaping a behavior they learn or something that they've created their own.
self-discovery.
Yeah, same thing with people. When that punishment is self-inflicted from years of not taking care of yourself.
Hmm. Yeah. All
Ta-da.
right. I got a question for you. So you mentioned you do the infrared sauna. So when you get out, of course, you're like, you gotta take a shower.
Yeah.
Do you What temperature shower do you take? Considering that you just deliberately brought your body temperature up before bedtime, which, if anybody doesn't know, you want to bring your body temperature up before bedtime because then it's easier to sleep
Because your
and
your inner whatever your interior temperature drops lower.
drops because it's almost kind of like counterintuitive because yes, you sleep better in the cold. So by exposing yourself to heat, it actually makes your body try to cool down more. So then when you get out of the heat, now it's like accelerated and you get cooler faster and you sleep, blah, 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 blah. So with that in mind, when you get out to take your shower, because you're a nasty rank son of a gun from sitting in
Yeah.
that sauna suit, what do you just take then a hot shower after that?
I typically take like a warmer shower after like listening to like, Andrew Huberman and like listening to some things that they're talking about. I haven't done the cold plunge thing in the morning, like the first thing. That's I guess what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
If you're mixing the two. But I just kind of just take another warm shower, and then I don't really go like super hot, because at that point, like I don't really, I well, obviously, Katie, I sweat like crazy.
Yeah, hot
So
showers, you'll come out and you'll still be sweating.
exactly. So like, I don't even want to like hop in a hot shower and the next like I'm still sweating and it's just uncomfortable. So I usually try to take like a warm shower. I just don't go into the cold because I've noticed, at least for me, if I go hot and then cold, like I'm wide awake, and then I'm like, well, now I'm gonna be up for
That defeated the
next
purpose.
few hours. So defeat the purpose of what my the cycle is that I try to do, or at least that routine.
Have you
Yeah,
ever cut weight in a bathtub?
no, I was when I was cutting weight, it was the old school like sauna suit in the sauna or steam room, or you're riding a bike or you're on a treadmill. Like none of that. Like like you see a lot of people now, like they do, what is it, salt, right? It's a
I don't know. I just know that I did it one time in my bathtub.
yeah, they
And
do, like it's like a salt thing, I guess. Like you soak yourself in like the salt, and then you wrap your body, and then you just drop out like quickly. I've seen a bunch of people do it. I've never done it though.
well, I mean maybe that's a more effective way, and I wish I had known it, because one time I was traveling and I had a tournament up in New England I was going to do. I was at my parents' house on vacation. I'm like, screw it, I'm on vacation. Let me go fight. Like,
Yeah.
and I mean, I didn't have a sauna anywhere, and I didn't know any gyms that had one. So I had heard that's it. Hadn't seen it done. Didn't ask. I had heard that you can cut weight in like really hot water. So screw it. I went on like I did a week long of the hyper hydration, where like I overhydrated for a
Yeah.
couple days, like 2 gallons a day for like 3 days, to the point where you're urinating nonstop. Like, don't even wear underwear. Just like wear a pair of shorts, because so you can just, that's one less thing that you got to like peel it out of, and because you're gonna be pissing all day. And I did that for 3 days, and then you start dramatically cutting back the water, but your body's been peeing so much that even though you're cutting back the water, you keep pissing.
Yeah. Just
So
used to it.
so now you're creating an imbalance. And then the um the night before the tournament, um I my parents had like a really big bathtub, and I got in there, man. I filled that son of a bitch up with that water that makes your balls singe,
Like,
like hot, hot, hot butthole pucker water. And
ugh,
I put a winter hat on. And I went down all the way up, like in the water. I went all the way down to my nose. So like
yeah.
the only thing above the water was my nose. And it's a good thing that I'm not too stubborn, because it probably would have drowned, because I almost passed out.
Uh,
Like I,
too relaxed, or you're just like
no,
the heat.
no, like I'm talking wah-wahs. You know the
Ooh,
wah-wahs when your heat stroke,
yeah,
like wah, 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 like everything just starts going in and out, in and out.
yeah,
Yeah, dude. It I mean, I think I cut like 5 pounds, which for just a reckless getting in, trying something out, is a lot.
yeah.
And I wasn't in there long, but man, I started getting dizzy, and I went to get up. Like I said, it's a deep tub. Dude, I almost ate it. Like I got up, and that was when the real woo, and my head was spinning.
Yeah.
And I went down, and luckily I kind of like stumbled and like caught myself on the edge of the tub. And I'm like, there's probably a better way to do this, but like you can just submerge yourself in really hot water, and now mind you, I got out and I was still sweating. Like 15
Yeah.
minutes later, I probably lost another half a pound, and I made weight, which was horrible, because like grappling tournaments, like you weigh
Same
in the
day.
day of. So it's like you weigh in the morning, and then it's like you're dumping Pedialyte and bananas and yogurt, and like for a couple hours until you get on the mat. So you
I don't
can
think
cut in a bathtub.
I don't think well, if that was a strategy back then, I don't think Leo would let me, because Leo was the old school thought process that if you cut, like we'd be cutting in Fairtex, like on the mats, or like wearing whatever. I'd be on the bike or on the treadmill, and then like I got yelled at one time because I would cut, took all the stuff off, weighed in, and I went to go shower. And Leo was the old Brazilian thought process was, the water is going to get back in your system through the shower. So so then I had it. this this is year
Okay.
this is where well, this is way over a decade ago. So I cut, and then I was cutting with an old training partner, Justin Holdus. And then I went to go shower. He's like, dude, he's like, Leo's gonna or dolphin noise, sorry, G. He's like, Leo's gonna, make you run again, because he thinks that the water's gonna reabsorb into your body. And I thought he was joking around because, I'm not the smartest guy, but I didn't, I knew that wasn't something that was gonna happen. And to go back out, Leo's like, he's like, you shower? I was like, hey, he's like, get back in there, put the sauna suit on. And I end up cutting, so that weight cut, I think I weighed 185. That was a pancreation fight. I was, I cut like 15 pounds that day. Because I was at 200 because I can't walk around. I I literally I'll feel sick to my body. I'll feel super sick if I weigh anything less than 200 pounds. Like I'll just feel like super depleted. So like I'll walk around. That's when I was like pretty lean, like a 205 to 200, and then cut 15 pounds to 185. But I used to could do a 30-pound weight cut to 170, and that's when an ultra bobblehead version of myself would appear. But yeah, that those weight cuts, I'm very happy that I don't have to do that. I'm pretty positive everyone around me is very happy that I don't do that as well because I become quite the irritable person as if I'm already not irritable.
Dude, 30 pounds is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, that sucked. Those were brutal times. That's
Well,
when that's when it was like only really no carbs for about the whole camp would be no carbs. Coming into camp, a lot of hydration, or coming out of camp, a lot of hydration. No real sugars. I would usually only do like meats and like some like spinach and kale, things of that like that. And then for the most part, it was just like 1 or 2 days of very little eat, plain white fish here and there, sauna cut, and then just murk yourself. And that 170.5, get out there, and then right when I'm done, I think I'd weigh the next day. I'd roughly weigh 190, 193, 195, depending on if I decided to ruin my life. Because I always had this thing of like, I really like McDonald's, or I used to really like McDonald's Big Macs.
mhm.
So after every single time I would cut, I would get like a Big Mac. But then my stomach, once I got a little bit older, like say later 20s, I found out that there's repercussions for eating bad food after eating really healthy for a couple months.
You
It
feel like
really,
horrible.
well, that and like, without describing too much detail, going to the restroom was very frequent, and it wasn't coming out like Katie was saying, drinking water. I mean, it was liquid, but it was out the the other end, and like your stomach's like super irritable. And I remember 25 years, I was 20, no, 26. I was joking around. I was like, man, I was like, after 25, like my stomach started getting messy. I was like, but then 26, I mean, like there's no room for error after that point. But yeah, those were real fun times, and like I said, really glad I don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I got it. My goal right now is, I mean, ideally, it's interesting because you're the same height as me, aren't you? How tall are you?
Yeah, I'm 6 foot.
Okay, thereabouts. Yeah, I'm 5'11",
Yeah,
and like right now I'm 215, and it's not a good 215. Like legit. Like pound for if I were pound for pound, I could possibly be competitive at 170 right now. Pound for pound. Like
yeah,
I don't belong. Like if you were to see him, well, you know how it is, and people who train know how it is. Like competitive grappling, someone who is going to weigh in at 215, they don't look like me.
yeah. It's
They look
everyone
like
looks a little
He-Man
bit different.
figures. They're like jacked because 215 is huge in weight
Yeah,
categorized sports, right? Like those are guys who are like muscled the up at in the
yeah.
200s. So I mean, basically what I'm saying is I'm fat, right? Like I was kind of beating around the bush there, I think a little bit. Like, I'm fat. Like competitively, I should be at 175
I
with
will
the
say
amount of
this
muscle.
though. I will say this just from being around people that cut, like myself, that cut, and like like just in general, like Leopoldo, Aaron, and myself, and another guy, or we were talking, because right now I'm two today I weighted at 216, but I was fluctuating between like 216 and 218, 220, and right now my current, like I'm in relatively good, I'm in really good shape right now. And I was talking to Aaron. I was like, man, I'm leaning out, but I was like, I'm leaning out at a heavier weight. And then Leo's like, yeah, he's like, because your head's like 100 pounds. He's like, so you can't even get like, he's like, you can't even get down to, because we were talking about like getting down to a lower weights just for some upcoming stuff that I may have planned. And I was just like, dude, I told Leo, I was like, man, I was like, been in a consistent diet for a couple months now. I was like, working out for a couple months now. I was like, eating everything right, not really having any cheat days or days off. And I was like, and I'm still like teeter tottering around 215, relatively lean. I was like, it would be a miracle, like to get down to like, I mean, to 170 and like 185 I think would be a push, but like those are all things like I think a lot of it too is like either like bone density or like skeletal structure,
Yeah. Yeah.
because there's a lot of guys who I see, like like you look at them, you're like, oh, there's no way that you're that heavy, but then like you see dudes who are skinny and like they're skinnier, they're not really like super ripped or buff or anything like that, but they're in shape, like that they're toned, they feel strong, they have a good gas tank, and then they're like 210, 215, 220, and then then you see guys who look super ripped and like lean and all this other stuff, and then they're like 190, 185, and they don't feel like the same strength. So I think it's a lot of it is just the different styles of strength too. I mean, because some of it, the physical features, like the aesthetic aspect of things, doesn't always translate. Sometimes you just get these big burly dudes who are
Oh
who
no, some
just,
of the strongest human beings I know, you wouldn't turn your head if you saw them.
yeah,
Like like if you saw them walk by, you wouldn't be, dang, what's his workout routine? Like you wouldn't say that at all. Actually, the strongest person I've ever met, I think our biceps, he might have me by half an inch.
yeah,
And I'm not big. I'm not you. I mean, I'm not. I mean, I'm not big.
not bodybuilder big.
No, like and I'm super small boned. You know, plenty of jokes about how small my wrists are and how small my hands are. Um, this guy is the strongest, and it's always a different perspective when you've been involved in any type of grappling sport. So when someone says this is the strongest person I know, if well, what's your point of reference? Well, I've wrestled with guys. I've wrestled with collegiate wrestlers, Division I wrestlers, bodybuilders, guys juiced out of their brains, big, small. Like, I got a pretty deep sample size, and this person is like chimpanzee strong. Yet
Yeah.
you, there's no muscle mass. Like, there's no. It looks like they've never touched a weight in their life, but it's that tractor hay bale mixed in with, I think, some less evolved primate stuff. I always tease him. I'm like, dude, I'm like 3 evolution scales farther than you. So, I mean, you just learned how to use a fork and you're still putting twigs in the hole to get the ants. Um, it's interesting how the different types of muscle tissue, um, how it does work differently with people. And you can see people who are like, really swole, but they can't do anything. There's no
Oh
strength there.
yeah. I mean, going off of like what you're saying, like one of the strongest people that I've ever rolled with, and someone that I know very well, and by far, I mean, there's like him and like one other guy who are just like just ridiculously strong. But Omar Lima, who is well, I'm announcing this today. He's going to be the official strength and conditioning coach for Canine Street League.
Nice.
He's also the strength and conditioning coach on the Canine University. If you guys aren't on the Canine University, he actually has courses on there for decoys and for handlers, for anchoring and all those other things. And he's my old strength and conditioning coach for when I used to fight. But same thing with Omar, like not like you look at him like, oh, like he's just bald dude. He's a little burly, like he doesn't have a lot of definition. As long as I've known that dude, never had any definition really. But I mean, like the dude was by far one of the strongest like people I've ever rolled with, like or just even been around, like just insanely strong, functionally strong. But again, like he doesn't look like the dudes who spend hours doing bicep curls or bench pressing, like. But the dude, the guy can like move giant men relatively easy, and submit them relatively easy. He's a black belt too, so that doesn't help either with that stuff. But yeah, Omar Lima, that guy for sure is one of the stronger ones, one of the strongest people like I've ever had the contact with, and the looks can be deceiving. So you pick a fight with that bald headed little dude. I mean, sorry, you're going to be hurting for a while.
Well, there's something to be said too. Like the minute someone grabs you, you within like 2 seconds, you know a lot. You know a lot about them. Like when you're doing any type of grappling, like just by that touch, when you both lock up and you just kind of give each other a little, you instantly know. You're like, okay, this is what is I'm in for, or this is what I'm gonna. Oh boy, and
Yeah.
I can't help but think about dogs and how there's some innate, undeniable genetic identities of who you are that are conveyed through touch, conveyed through, like even, some dogs, especially when we get into like high end working dogs, right? We've all been there where that dog bumped us in the house or in the social gather, or just somewhere where the dog's milling around and the dog absolutely intentionally freaking checked you and gave
Yeah.
and bumped into you to see what would happen. Now, only certain dogs are going to do that. Like there's some dogs that have no desire to even get there. But then there are those dogs who they want to know. They want to see what's up and they want to feel it. And you can feel it in return if you know what you're looking for. And there's something to be said about who we are as an animal and our identity of our physical strength and also our blah, 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 hormonal identity. Like why do dogs always stick their nose up each other's butts and smell each other's poop? Well, it's the easiest way for them to get odor that either that or they would stick their nose up each other's mouth, but like to get to smell the blood, to smell like the identity, to get everything they can of who are you. That's what they get, a lot of that through the poop, because the poop spends a lot of time up against a really thin membrane and on the other side is blood. There's a
Yeah.
lot happening there. There's a lot of who you are in your odor and a lot of your identity in your odor and in your touch. Now, we as humans, I don't think, we're consciously in tune to the odor part. Um, outside of, I mean, I'm sure we've all heard about like there's back in the day, it used to be in like bodybuilding magazines in the back of it where all the ads were, you'd see like some type of hormonal cologne where if you wore it,
Oh,
you were irresistible. And I'm like,
no.
oh, that would be dangerous. I'm like, I get enough problems. I'm irresistible enough. I don't need to
Oh,
wear some of that cologne. But
that Sex Panther, 60% of the
Sex
time, it works
Panther.
100% of the time.
Exactly, right? The dogs know what's up. Oh my gosh. Elmo pissed on Luna today.
Uh-oh.
Like he lifted his leg on her. That kind of
Yeah.
threw my day off a little bit because I had to give her a bath. Like she's out there taking a leak. It's the first one of the day. I let them both out because like they commingle now. Like I kept them apart for a long time, and
Yeah.
now they commingle a lot. It's hilarious watching the two of them. And she goes over and pops a squat, and I wasn't paying it. He's done this before. And so I have to yell at him, like, tell him to stop. And he gets that look. I can tell he's getting ready to, and then he'll look over at me, and I'm like, and then he keeps it moving. Well, I wasn't paying attention. I was actually like doing some push-ups on my patio. And I lift my head up and I see him sniffing as she's peeing. He takes one step forward, and like that half a step forward, that leg comes up, and I'm like, and he just kind of like he pinched it after he soaked her back end. And I'm
Oh.
like, dude, you just marked her. And now she's covered in like fresh morning musk dog, male dog pee.
The stinkiest kind.
The stinky, like if people don't know, like male dog urine can smell differently based on why they're going to the bathroom. Like they can actually like crank up the juice. And he acts so tough. And like, oh, last night she punked the snot out of him. Now she is a much more dominant dog than he
That's to
is.
say, she seems more, from at least from
She
my experience with her, seeing her, and then from what you've described to me, she seems to me a little more of that, like, little more spicy
Oh,
than,
she's very spicy. He's just marshmallow. Like,
yeah.
hey, hey, he's Elmo. That's why I named him Elmo. Like he is Elmo, the character. Um, and like when they play, she is very intense. And with any other dog, like you could tell it could kick off into a fight like so easily. I don't worry about it at all. His ability to diffuse and like make it jovial, make it
Yeah.
fun. He's just he's amazing at that with her. Well, last night she was on the dog bed in the living room and she got comfortable.
Uh,
And he walks over like he's just goofy. He's always in a good mood. And he walks over to her and gives her a little sniff, gives her a little lick. Well, then he starts to encroach like more into the space. And I saw her just kind of lean back and then like freeze. And I'm like, I'm saying my buddy was at my house. I'm like, dude, check this out. Check, don't say anything. Something's about to pop off. And it wasn't bad, like I wasn't setting them up for anything dangerous, but like all of a sudden out of nowhere, you hear like the little light girly gurgle she gives
yeah,
him, and then for like the next 20 minutes he wouldn't even go near that side of the room. um and my buddy's like, dude, they play together all the time. I'm like, dude, doesn't matter, she's comfortable, that's her bed.
yeah.
And dogs, it goes to show like how much dog space freaking matters.
Well, same thing with
Space
people.
matters
Yeah,
more than food sometimes to many dogs. I know we kind of got off on a tangent there, but I guess it's a dog show. Kind of.
might as well include some dogs into the
A little
podcast.
bit, a little bit of dog stuff, but it seemed relevant with hormones and excretion. And then, hey, yeah, that's right. Elmo peed on Luna this morning, dude. That was wild. Um, I don't know, but
Well, I think like that's something. I think like we talk about. Let's talk about the dog stuff. I mean, I have 8 dogs. I currently have 8 dogs. So see, I have Cerberus, Bibbs, Ozzy, Felix, Zando, Lucy, Zilla, Bobby. Yeah, so I have 8. Uh, 6 of those are intact, male and female. So like there's a variety of different different personalities per se, right? There's the dogs who are like Ozzy, who he's very spatial, he's very possessive, especially with his people. He's the atypical dominant, alpha male, big strong dog. And then it's funny because you have like Felix, who is the giant bicolored one that we have.
mhm.
He's big, strong, but it sounds similar to Elmo, just kind of just goofy, like just like always happy, always ecstatic, just very playful. When he does his like bite work stuff, like because we have him on legs, which I greatly regret because he's just destroying my freaking legs. But you can tell he bites and it's a genetic quality. Like for me, like you talked about, like when you can see it, sense like certain genetic qualities in dogs, like with the dogs bite me, like I can feel it. Like I can probably about 8. I'll say I'll give myself 80%. I can see what the genetic lineage is. Like where like, oh, I can feel the way that their mouth shifts, how they grip, where they grip, how they pull, how they push. Their sensitivities when it comes to spatial pressure, like different things. And all my dogs they all share some lineage. Mostly it's all Peggy stuff. And it's funny because, they all are very similar in the sense when it comes to some genetic qualities, but they're all individually different when it comes to personality, and what they like, what they don't like. Like Lucy, for example, who is Ozzy's sister, we talked about, he kind of sounds similar to Luna, where like her thing is she can give it, she doesn't really care about food, doesn't really care about toys, but spatial or space is what she cares about the most. Particularly her crate or a bed. She can be kind of similar to how Luna is. Whereas like Felix is just like, I don't care, everything's great. Like it's pretty much fine. Ozzy's like everyone's off limits. Cerberus doesn't give it. Cerberus is old and retired now, so he doesn't really care too much. Zilla is very similar in the sense where he has his spatial issues, and he also has he's possessive over specific toys, certain things. But it's always really interesting when it comes to when learning like the genetic aspect of things. They're all very similar, but also their individual personalities and how things shift when a female goes into heat. A lot of people were always like asking me like, how do you deal with like some of the females you have when they were in heat and doing these things? So like for the most part, most of my males, at least what I'm around, like don't have like an issue. Like they'll be a little, like the girls for the most part have a little more of the issue. Like they're more spinning it out, they're a little bit more attitudey. But like at least when I'm around, like the boys don't push buttons. They won't mess around. Well, Bobby, the little American bully we have, he's learning that you don't push buttons around here because he's still a puppy. He's only a little over a year. Um, but for the most part, we don't have those too many of those issues, which is one of the things I was actually kind of worried about when it came to like like how they rank themselves a little bit and what they were going to be, what they were going to do when it came to females being in heat. But yeah, other than those little like specific things that they have when it comes to their little personality traits and what they find, to be something that they can react to. I don't really see too much of an issue when it comes to, the higher value stuff, which would be a female and heat, right? So I always find that really interesting. But or like, if one of my guys come in, or like, they're taking the dogs out, then they start acting like more of like, you know, kind of dickheads.
Now, do you handle all the dogs? Are you able, like let's say Ozzy, for example,
I don't
who
touch him.
yeah, that's where I was going with
I
that.
don't. We've gone. I would say the pandemic changed everything for like mine and his relationship. Before, like when Aaron got really sick, like right before the pandemic, I can take him out, and he's fine. Like I just kind of steered clear of it just because of the goals that Aaron and I have for him.
Mhm.
Um, like he can go out, like he'd be fine. But after the pandemic, when we did so much, like we were working, well, I was working him every day. A lot of pressure, a lot of civil things, muzzle work, hidden sleeve work, passive civil work, passive tacking them on to hidden work. Like at that point, me and him we have an understanding, like okay, like we're we're at an impasse now now because he's kicked my ass for so long and he's a pushy dog. So I don't touch him, I don't handle him, but the rest of the dogs, it's easy. Just because I've learned, each dog I kind of train or treat a little bit differently, just as kind of my own little experiment or art piece or whatever you want to call it. But with Ozzy, we kind of push the limitations there
Yeah.
of everything, and we decided we weren't going to do that with any more of our dogs, just because of I can't really handle Ozzy because if I do,
Logistics. It becomes
yeah,
impractical.
yeah, especially with a dog that powerful, man. I mean, that dude can. That dude's popped Kevlar sleeves. He put a hole through a Kevlar sleeve, through a Neo, and into my arm. Um, Busted leg. He basically my decoy armor, from Ray Allen. He went through a training weight suit, leather, a Neo into my arm. The dog's got pressure for days. So just the besides the logistical aspect of things, some dogs you can risk like, oh, if I get bit by them, I'll be, it's gonna suck, but it's not gonna be like life altering, or I'm gonna be laid up. But like him, he's a dog that like, oh, he decides to flip the switch and we go into he's gonna bite me. Yeah, that's gonna be a life altering bite that would not be good. And I basically taught him not to out to me, and so when I say out or los or whatever the thing is, he just counters harder. So yeah, kind of created my own issue there, but it's a good
Yeah, I
one.
was gonna say, I think it's good that you keep it at one dog in the household that you have that type of situation with. I mean, this is under your roof. There's some practicality here that we have to
Yep.
take into consideration. Wow. Now,
Yeah.
the other guys, like, do your dogs operate as a pack? Like, do you have like small packs within there that you can, go out play ball with or air them out, or how does that work?
So I can take out all of them besides Ozzy, like what I was saying.
Yeah.
And then they won't mess around with me. Occasionally there's like, Zilla's a dick and he'll test certain things. But for the most part, like, if I just tell them no, they'll all stop and they can all go out and do their thing. But that's something that only I can do. And I have to be like vigilant, very vigilant of what's going on and making sure that everyone's cool. But for the most part, I can take like the deck that we have up there.
Mhm.
I'll take them all out there and with one ball and a chuck it and just have them run and they'll chill out and do that thing. They'll just go out there, and have a good time. But there's certain times too, if I'm in a rush and if I know that I'm like not going to be like hyper vigilant or like I got to be like on my phone with a call or something going on, then I'll break them up into safer packs, which is typically two different packs. Or I'll just like exclude like Bobby or Zilla from the issue because those two seem to be the ones. So it's Bobby because he's just a young American stubborn bully, and Zilla because he can be a little bit of a prick, with the other males, and he's more of like a sissy. Like they'll call his bluff, and he'll just like, oh no, just kidding, type of a thing. But he'll push it to the point where when they call his bluff, it's with teeth. So
Mhm.
I have to be vigilant with it, but I can take them all out, and everyone's pretty good.
I think it's interesting that you very clearly and deliberately mentioned that, like, I can do this
Yeah.
with them. And you know, a lot of people don't understand. Like these dogs know who's who. And we were talking earlier about identity, like who you are. And yeah, you can get a couple dogs that with this person in the yard, they will tolerate each other. They will be
Yeah.
maybe throw a little side eye, but you know, that's it. But you put a different human being in there and they'll be like, oh, that our boss isn't here, dad isn't around. And then the FUs start flying, and it's like you just change the caretaker, you change the person who's there, and it changes everything. Just I mean, it's no different than kids in a classroom. You know, with one teacher, they might behave one way. I mean, I'm just saying I learned this from over a decade in public education, where there were kids who were absolute monsters in other classrooms. They'd get sent to my room and they were angels. And it wasn't because I did anything to them. Like I
Yeah.
didn't punish them more than someone else or whatever. I'm not that person over there. I'm different. I have different boundaries. I enforce my boundaries differently. Maybe just the fact that I enforce them. Um, and like the kids would behave completely different. And yes, I did just use children to make an analogy for people are like, did he just compare? Yeah, they're all animals, and so are we. We're all social creatures that live in social groupings and understand the constructs of social hierarchies. So I just find it interesting and noteworthy that how you brought that up. If I'm here, it's this way, but meanwhile, it doesn't matter because it's not going to be with Ozzy anyway.
Yeah, I mean, but that's a good point, like, and I talk to this to, like, my clients too, right? Because it all transcends a little bit, because some of it, a lot of times when people would hear that word, like, stating like, when I'm here, I'm doing this, or especially the way that I talk and the way that I look, everyone thinks it's like, oh, it's because, like you said, when it comes to the kids, like, it doesn't mean that you're like mean, or you're being, you
Tough
know,
guy,
tough guy,
overbearing. No,
or
not at
like
all.
or like what people, the common phrase that, it's overly used in the dog world, or it used to be for a while, alpha, in that sense, like, it's just I believe it's a specific when it comes to presence and just the natural communication that you have with animals. And another thing too is I've been doing this for a long, long time. So there's things that are ingrained in me just from, behavioral repetition and doing the same things over and learning to work around a large amount of dogs, and being in front of dogs that will attack you, that aren't trained to attack you. They're doing it because, the owners have done whatever, or it's a behavioral case.
Mhm.
So there's a specific level of calmness, presence, and things that all kind of go into that. And those are certain things that we teach, like, especially in the hierarchy in the household, because typically there's good cop and bad cop in every household. You see it all the time when, typically the enforcer in the relationship is walking the dog, and then, the good cop is behind them or to the side of them, the dog's looking over at the other person, like, hey, can you take the leash, because I typically have more fun with you, and that's typically because, that one's a little more higher pitched, and, a little more cuddly, and not necessarily, enforcing specific behavioral things or holding the dog accountable for certain things. And you can see the disparity in between the two relationships. So, when we talk to people, it's like, okay, like, if you want your relationship to be like how it is with the other person, you have to kind of exhibit certain things. And if you want to, like, keep your relationship the way it is, then don't expect the results that this person is getting, because you're not doing the same as that person, right? So, like you said, it's like dogs have their own, just like kids have their own relationships with their teachers and whatnot. Dogs have their own relationships with the individual people that come into their lives. Some are more cuddly with, some they're going to be a little more attentive to, they're going to be a little more respectful to, some they're going to have no respect for, no respect for, and walk all over. But it is pretty interesting on how that dynamic works, when it comes to just that social environment or that social relationship.
Absolutely. I've noticed I always find it cool to see how dogs respond differently to, just to kind of go with the way you're explaining, like good cop, bad cop, right? So you have the strong leader, the strong, consistent, emotionally under control person, and then you have the hyper affectionate, emotionally all over the place, more cuddly, definitely weaker person. And how some dogs will gravitate towards the weaker person because they feel empowered, like they have like almost this power quest. And that doesn't make them like a top dog. It doesn't, I'm not saying it's because they're like an alpha dog or whatever. Typically the stronger dogs enjoy being around the stronger person. There's like this weird, like a parabola, or I think that's what it's called, a parabola, right? You know, you got the outside spectrum, and then you got like the bulk in the middle. But like I find dogs who sometimes really weak ones who really don't want to be in control, they're just weak dog. Well, they actually do better and feel better with the stronger person because it's
Yeah.
like, ah, you complete me. Like, oh, you'll take care of me, you'll protect me. And you know, and when I say they'll be drawn to, it's like if you put both people in the field and they each called the dog, which one is the dog going to go to? And but then you have dogs who are kind of like bullies, meaning they act tough, but they're really not tough.
Yep.
I find those dogs sometimes they're pushed away by the strong person because that person kind of calls their bluff. That person kind of checks them and then like, hey, you're not that strong, dude. Stop being a jerk. Those
Yep.
dogs will then gravitate towards the weaker person where they can, because let's say it's like a dog with low self-esteem, right? Like he goes to the weaker person so that he can feel special because he knows he can be in control there. He knows he's going to be feel empowered. And I mean I could go on and on with that, but it's really fun watching. You can learn a lot by a dog of about a dog by watching who he chooses in a household like that.
Yep.
Like, is he if there is a strong person in the home and then you have a weaker person, who is the dog choosing? Because that'll tell you, like like the dogs who are dicks, I find they choose the weaker person because they're a dick.
Yep.
And they like they want it, they want to be in a bully. But like the dog that's like more stable, more smooth, is going to choose the stronger person, either because A, they respect that person and they identify with them. Not literally, before someone's like, oh, you're
Uh,
anthropomorphizing. The dog can't identify. Shut up. You know what I mean? Um,
yeah.
or it's a really weak dog. Yeah, like Elmo, for example. I brought Elmo around the OG and it's a completely different freaking dog. Like within
I think you told me about
seconds.
that story. Yeah.
Yeah, like within seconds. And then he took the dog out, ran him through his shed over top of tools, and had the dog doing obstacles. And then like walks back, hands me the leash, and says, "Dog just needs a stronger handler. Hey, what's for breakfast, everybody?" And I was like, "Fuck, yeah, screw you, dude." Like, oh man. But I don't know.
Fun stuff,
Cool
as
stuff.
always.
It's cool. Like, I'm glad we got to get into that because like once you open the door to like talking about that type of stuff, man, we'll be here for another 2 hours. I just think that's cool, and I wish more people would reflect upon that type of stuff in with dogs and stop trying to cookie cutter this stuff. Stop trying to like put every dog into a box and label it this way and label it that way. It's like, no, man, like it's so fluid. It's so organic. These dogs have such different personalities and temperaments. And you know what? Like you just got to look at that dog in front of you and let him tell you who he is and then listen
Yep.
and then go from there. And you know, you don't get that through anything other than just being around dogs and looking to see what they're in listening. That's probably the better way. Just listen to the damn dog. They'll tell you who they are if you're listening.
Absolutely. It's funny enough, and I'll say this before we wrap everything up, so it's getting a little bit later here. I was on a podcast yesterday in the UK, and like they're interviewing, and we were talking about like dog training, and what's not necessarily what separates us, but what are the things that makes Primal Canine unique in the dog training world, or at least like where we're at, and like the big thing, like you said too, it's like we look at the dog that's in front of us, and we tailor basically the training, the balance from a training based on the individual dog. We don't really follow systems. And Katie, you and I have talked about this before. When new dog trainers, they go to these courses, they learn these brand new things or things that they think they're brand new things, and then it's gospel, and it's the dog doesn't fit into the box, then the dog doesn't, that's a bad dog, and there's no adaptation, there's no tailoring, there's no understanding that hey, they just require specific things, just like you talked about, like like the OG throwing a shot at you, like just requires this, type of a thing.
Yeah.
It is really important to sit there, especially as a dog trainer, to one, examine the dog's behavior, see what they're doing, look at their relationship, look at the dichotomy of their relationship that they have with, the handler, the two handlers, three handler, whoever's there, the relationship they have with you, how they perceive you, all those other things, right? And then, adapt from there and use a balanced approach to it in order to create, the program that best fits that dog versus finding the system that you really like for your individual dog. And the reason why it works for your individual dog is maybe it applies to your personality, your dog's personality, and it all fits together. But it doesn't mean it's going to apply to the dog that's in front of you and the relationship that the handler has with that dog as well. versus trying to, put it that way. But, that tailoring, and I think a lot of it is just having, I don't know if I'm using the right term here, but like that self introspective, like where you have to analyze yourself too. Like you kind of have to get a little more introspective and be like, okay, maybe I have to change certain things that I'm approaching this with in order to communicate better to the team that's in front of me, right? So I mean that's
Absolutely.
a lot of things that we have to look at when you're talking about being a dog trainer, professional dog trainer, because it is much more, like we've always say, it is much more than just working with that individual dog. It's about working with everyone around too.
Well said, sir. Well said.
Well, thank you. Awesome, man. Well, before we wrap it up, brother, any last comments, last things, anything you want to share, or
No,
um,
we're good. People need to, guys, this stuff is posted on Facebook, it's on YouTube, it's on, I know all of our channels are sharing in our stories, the snippets and the clips and the cuts. Give this stuff a share, give it a comment. If it doesn't matter what the comment is, just like let us know what you think. If there's something you want to hear us talk about. I mean, clearly we don't care. Like we just have fun on here. We catch up with one another and we share it with you guys. But if you have stuff you want to hear us specifically talk about, throw it in a comment on Instagram,
absolutely.
on the YouTube channel. Like let us know. We'll either say, yeah, no, we're not going to talk about that, or we'll throw it at the wall and we'll see what sticks. It's important. Like we want to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely. And, kind of, piggybacking off of what Katie said, if you have questions, ask questions in the comments. We'll either respond to you on there, on whatever platform we're using, or, we'll bring it up in the show, or we'll do both. Typically, we'll probably do both because that's kind of how Katie's and my mind works, and we'll kind of get stuck and next, we'll have a tangent on it. So yeah, share with your friends, subscribe, like, follow, do all the things that you can do. We definitely have some stuff, more fun conversations in store for you guys. But yeah, this is episode 35, right? So this is a wrapped
35.
episode. 35, 36 is on the way next week, I believe. And like Katie said, we film these things pretty consistently. We constantly pump things out for you guys. So yeah, I hope you're enjoying. Again, make sure you share, comment, like with your friends. But yeah, brother, good talking to you as always. See you later,
Adios.
guys.